Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about whether there's going to be a V-shaped recovery, a U-shaped recovery, or an L-shaped recovery, because this is the entire debate right now. Everybody wants to know if we're going to have a strong growth after the slump or whether this is going to be a subdued recovery. If we look at the reality, the history tells us that L-shaped recoveries are actually not an anomaly. They are mostly the norm. In the past 3 decades, most recoveries have been weaker than the previous 3 recoveries, not just in GDP growth, but in real wage growth and in capital expenditure. This is very important to understand, because although this crisis is significantly different to others, because it is first a supply shock, then a government-forced shutdown of the economy, and then a reopening, it is true that it also has very significant ripple effects that stay there for a longer period of time. According to Deutsche Bank, it takes about 22 days to close an economy entirely, but it takes between 4 to 10 times that figure in order to bring it back to where it was. If we think, for example, of earnings, JP Morgan estimates that in 2021, most companies will still be delivering around 20% lower earnings than in 2019. Therefore, the recovery is pushed back to around the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. Even Jerome Powell has said it. An important factor here is unemployment. What makes this crisis different is how severe the unemployment increase has been, what a massive shock it has generated on citizens, and what consequences that will have in terms of consumption afterwards. First, the vast majority of unemployment comes from the sector of travel and leisure and the sector of education, healthcare, and business services. About 75% of the job losses come from those sectors. So it is very difficult to believe that those sectors will come back very, very quickly if the economy is not open immediately. More importantly, if the economy is not open in a way that continues to deliver a level of growth in the services sector that allows the GDP to come back strongly. Why? Because remember that the manufacturing sector was already in contraction in 2019. It's been weak for several years. Second, the services sector needs to pick up very quickly, but it needs to pick up also strongly, because in the services sector, it's not just about returning some jobs to the equation. It is about how our households going to consume. It seems very unlikely to believe that households that have seen such a severe shock to their earnings, to their disposable income, are just going to go out and start spending like there's no tomorrow. It is also very difficult to believe that real wage growth is going to continue where it was at the beginning of 2020, fundamentally, because so many companies will have to hold on to cash in order to keep a certain level of strength in their balance sheet, which has been very, very negatively impacted by the crisis. So the ripple effects on solvency, the ripple effects on household consumption, and the domino impact of sticking to a level of unemployment that will be significantly higher than estimated at the end of 2020 makes the V-shaped recovery almost impossible. It is true that the Federal Reserve is increasing its balance sheet massively and it's injecting a lot of liquidity, but the Fed cannot print jobs and the Fed cannot solve a problem of solvency with liquidity. And it is going to be a problem of solvency and a problem of recovering jobs that need a level of consumption that is going to be very difficult to achieve in such a difficult environment as the one that we are seeing, even with an open economy. As such, it is very important to implement supply-side measures. The government needs to fully understand that if it doesn't start to attract a lot more investment, many of those jobs will simply not come back quickly. The change in consumption patterns that is already happening, and the difficulty of recovering capital expenditure, of recovering job hiring because of the strains on balance sheets of companies, all of those will likely impact the economy, even if the Federal Reserve and the government, one prints money, the other spends a lot. Remember that you don't solve a supply shock with demand-side policies, and that the key to a strong recovery is to aim the policies to those sectors and jobs and businesses that are falling like flies. And those are fundamentally in the travel and leisure sector, in the education and healthcare sector, and also in the business services, professionals that provide services to other businesses. So let's be extremely focused on that. Let's tell it to our congressmen and to our congresspeople and get as much of an action as possible, because if not, the recovery is going to be worse than what we estimate, and L-shaped is now becoming a very, very, very likely scenario. Thank you so much for following this YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Subscribe to the channel. Please leave your comments below. Also follow my website and continue with the dialogue. Keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.